In the Pharmac audio notes, we'll be looking at Cotrimoxazole, beta blockers, what is antagonism, Mannitol, Ondansetron, and Prazosin. So, moving on, Cotrimoxazole. Cotrimoxazole is AMA, that is antimicrobial agent, and Cotrimoxazole is a fixed dose combination of sulfamethoxazole and trimethoprim, and it is given in the ratio 5:1, and this is WHO approved. So the mechanism of action is that PABA is converted to DHFA and it is converted to THFA. So this PABA is nothing but para-aminobenzoic acid. It's converted to dry hydrofolic acid and it is later converted to tetrahydrofolic acid. So in the conversion of PABA to DHFA, folate synthase is used, and for conversion of DHFA to THFA, dihydrofolate reductase is used. So the role of sulfamethoxazole is that it inhibits the activity of folate synthase. So due to this inhibition of folate synthase, DHFA is not formed from PABA. And talking about the role of trimethoprim inhibits the dihydrofolate reductase. So due to the inhibition, THFA is not formed from DHFA. So moving on to the advantage of combination of these two drugs is that individually they are bacteriostatic, but when taken together they form a bactericidal effect, and the development of bacterial resistance is also reduced. It is mainly given orally. It is also available in parenteral use. It is metabolized in the liver and it is excreted mainly in urine. Adverse effects, it includes skin rashes, gastrointestinal disturbances, and some of the rare adverse effects includes Stevens-Johnson syndrome, erythema multiforme, exfoliate dermatitis. GI symptoms like nausea, vomiting, glossitis, and stomatitis can also be seen, and megaloblastic anemia can also be a result of the folate deficiency, and mainly it occurs in alcoholics and malnourished individuals. Bone marrow suppression along with leukopenia, neutropenia, and thrombocytopenia can also occur, but it is rare. And one thing that needs to be known is that it's completely contraindicated in pregnancy. Talking about the therapeutic uses of Cotrimoxazole, it is used in UTI, respiratory tract infections, bacterial diarrheas, pneumocystitis infection, nocardiosis, chancroid, and also in typhoid fever. In typhoid fever, mainly fluoroquinolones or the third generation cephalosporins are the main choice of treatment, but even Cotrimoxazole can also be effective. Next, we'll be talking about beta blockers. Beta adrenergic blockers, the main function is beta receptor mediated effects of sympathetic stimulation and adrenergic drugs are blocked. So these adrenergic agonists, they act on beta receptors and also catecholamines. And then what is noticed is that in presence of beta blockers, these effects are stopped. So just revising the classification, first generation, second and third generation of beta blockers are present. So under first generation, they are non-selective beta adrenergic blockers, that is propranolol, timolol, nadolol, pindolol, sotalolol. And second generation, beta 1 selective adrenergic blockers, that is atenolol, acebutolol, bisoprolol, esmolol, and metoprolol. Moving on to the third generation, there is beta blockers with additional vasodilatory effect, and it is divided into beta 1 selective and non-selective. Non-selective, there is labetalol, carvedilol. Beta 1 selective, there is betaxolol, celiprolol, and nebivolol. So just quickly going through the uses of beta blockers. Beta blockers is mainly, it can be used in hypertension. It is useful in all grades of hypertension, and also in patients with angina, MI, or with cardiac arrhythmias. So the advantage of using these beta blockers is that it is well tolerated, has a longer duration of action, it is cheaper, and also there's the sodium and water retention is less. And also it is used in congestive cardiac failure, pheochromocytoma, glaucoma, in prophylaxis of migraine, hyperthyroidism, in essential tremors, acute anxiety states, alcohol withdrawal, hypertrophic obstructive cardiomyopathy, dissecting aortic aneurysms. I'll repeat: hypertension, MI, angina prophylaxis, cardiac arrhythmias, congestive cardiac failure, pheochromocytoma, glaucoma, prophylaxis of migraine, essential tremors, hyperthyroidism, acute anxiety states, alcohol withdrawal, hypertrophic obstructive cardiomyopathy, dissecting aortic aneurysms. So, looking at the adverse effects of beta blockers, with respect to the CVS, bradycardia, heart block, and also congestive heart failure may precipitate in patients with low cardiac reserve, and also can result in unopposed alpha-1 action, and it further reduces the blood supply and may worsen the peripheral vascular disease. It can also exacerbate variant angina due to the unopposed alpha-1 action, and in case of respiratory system, it can result in severe bronchospasm in patients with asthma and COPD, and it is contraindicated in such patients. And CNS, it can result in hallucinations, fatigue, mental depression, and sleep disturbances. And metabolic, the recovery from hypoglycemia is delayed due to beta blockers. And in case of muscular weakness and tiredness, due to the reduced blood flow to skeletal muscles, and also results in withdrawal symptoms. Talking about the drug interactions, propranolol along with verapamil can produce additive cardiac depressant effect and may lead to CCF, bradyarrhythmias, heart block, and even cardiac arrest. Insulin or sulfonylureas along with beta blockers, it delays the recovery of hypoglycemia. Cholestyramine and cholecystipol along with beta blockers, it results in interfering absorption of beta blockers. Propranolol with lignocaine, it decreases the hepatic blood flow, and propranolol with NSAIDs decrease the antihypertensive effect of beta blockers. Propranolol with chlorpromazine interferes with the first pass metabolism of chlorpromazine and increases its bioavailability. Next, we'll be talking about antagonism. That is nothing but the drug antagonism. So, antagonism is divided into 4 types mainly. That is physical antagonism, chemical antagonism, physiological antagonism, and receptor antagonism. And under receptor antagonism, there's competitive antagonism, and it can be further divided into equilibrium and non-equilibrium type. And another part of receptor antagonism is non-competitive antagonism. So firstly, talking about physical antagonism. So here it is mainly due to the physical property of the drugs. An example is adsorption of alkaloids by activated charcoal, which is mainly used in alkaloid poisoning. And next, chemical antagonism. It is the opposing action due to the chemical property. Example is antacids. They are weak bases and they mainly neutralize the gastric acid and are used in case of peptic ulcers, and also in case of chelating agents, in case of metal poisoning. Physiological antagonism. So in physiological antagonism, 2 drugs, they act at different receptors, or they act on the same physiological system, but they produce different opposite effects. Example is insulin and glucagon on blood sugar, adrenaline and histamine on bronchial smooth muscles. Then moving on to receptor antagonism. The antagonist, it binds to the same receptor as that of the agonist and it binds the effect. So here what happens is, in case of competitive antagonism, both the agonist and antagonist, they act on the same receptor and they bind reversibly. This is in case of equilibrium type. Example can be acetylcholine and atropine acting on muscarinic receptors, morphine and naloxone acting on opioid receptors. Moving on to non-equilibrium antagonism, that is a type of competitive antagonism. Here the antagonist binds on the same time of the site of the receptor, but here it is irreversible. Example is phenoxybenzamine and adrenaline at alpha receptors. Then moving on to non-competitive antagonism. Here the antagonist, it binds on a different site of the receptor and produces the antagonist effect. Example is diazepam and bicuculin. Next we'll be talking about mannitol. So mannitol is used in case of, it acts on the renal and it is nothing but an osmotic diuretics, and other osmotic diuretics include glycerol and isosorbide. So mannitol, it is mainly administered IV and it is pharmacologically inert, that is, it is neither metabolized in the body nor it is significantly reabsorbed by the tubules. The mechanism of action is that mannitol, it increases the osmolality of plasma and this results in the fluid shift from ICC to ECF, that is nothing but the intracellular compartment to the extracellular fluid, and then the ECF volume is increased, and this also increases the GFR, and in addition the mannitol, it is also filtered at the glomerulus and this also increases the osmolality of tubular fluid and it inhibits the reabsorption of water and decreases the passive reabsorption of NaCl. So as the whole, the result is that the urine volume is increased and there is also urinary excretion of sodium, chloride, potassium, calcium, magnesium, phosphate, bicarbonate. So coming to the main uses of osmotic diuretics, it is mainly used in case of elevated intracranial tension, that is, it is used to decrease the intracranial pressure, and also the IOP is reduced. It can also be used to prevent the acute renal shutdown and shock, cardiovascular surgery, hemolytic transfusion reactions. It is also used in maintain the osmolality of ECF after dialysis. Talking about the adverse effects of osmotic diuretics, it can result in hyperglycemia, headache, nausea, vomiting, and can also result in pulmonary edema. And in talking about contraindications, it is contraindicated in chronic edema, anuric renal disease, active intracranial bleeding, and acute tubular necrosis. It is mainly contraindicated in congestive cardiac failure and pulmonary edema, as it expands the ECF volume and it increases the load on the heart, which aggravates the condition. Next we have Ondansetron. So just recollect and think, where does Ondansetron come under? It comes under the 5-HT3 antagonist. So the main mechanism of action is, in case of administration of anti-cancer drugs and in case of radiotherapy, there is major tissue damage in the gut and this releases 5-HT, that is serotonin, from the enterochromaffin cells of the intestinal mucosa. And what happens is the stimulation of vagal efferents in the gut takes place through the 5-HT3 receptors, and also the impulses to the CTZ and STN, and this, it induces vomiting. So the 5-HT3 antagonists, they block the two main functions, that is vagal efferents in the gut, and also block the impulses to the CTZ and STN. Talking about the pharmacokinetics, It is well absorbed in oral administration. It is excreted in urine and feces. It can also be given through IV. And the important drug, that is Ondansetron, is the longest duration of action among the 5-HT3 antagonists. And also it should be known that Granisetron is more potent and longer acting than Ondansetron. So coming to the main uses of 5-HT3 antagonist, it is used in chemotherapy-induced nausea and vomiting, and also effective in hyperemesis of pregnancy, post-operative, post-radiation and drug-induced vomiting. But what needs to be known is that it is not effective against motion sickness. Ramosetrin can also be used in case of irritable bowel syndrome. Adverse effects, they are well tolerated. They may cause dizziness, diarrhea and headache. Moving on, Prazosin. Prazosin, it's an easy drug. It is an alpha blocker. To be specific, it is a selective alpha-1 blocker. And other drugs which fall under this category are Prazosin, Doxazosin, Alfuzosin, Tamsulosin and Silodosin. So talking about the therapeutic uses of the alpha blockers, it can be used in pheochromocytoma, and one important thing to note is that beta blockers, it should not be given alone in case of pheochromocytoma, as it can result in unopposed alpha-1 action, and this can lead to severe rise in BP due to vasoconstriction. So always alpha receptor blocker must be administered before the beta blocker. Other uses are hypertensive emergencies, essential hypertension, benign prostatic hyperplasia, tissue necrosis, male sexual dysfunction, and also used in congestive cardiac failure and peripheral vascular disease. Talking about adverse effects, within a short duration of time after administration, it can result in postural hypotension and syncopal effect. It may also lead to nasal stuffiness, tachycardia, impaired ejaculation and impotence. As I have spoken about selective alpha-1 blockers, let me just highlight the selective alpha-2 adrenergic blockers as well. So here the drug is yohimbine. It is an alkaloid. It blocks the alpha-2 receptors, and it is an aphrodisiac and not often used in practice. Thank you.